Hello, in this tutorial I want to teach you or to show you how to create interactive buttons where you could change the label. You can show and hide icons within the buttons, change the size of the button with just a set of toggles and drop downs into Figma. Let me show you how. So if you, let's say this is the button that I'm going to show you how to create. When you select this button is a component, and the cool thing about this is that if you you have a set of tools here. Let me go closer. Here on my right you have, this is the button, and you have a set of tools where you can change between the style. For example, this button can be text link, text button, it can be outline, it can be two states like hover or default. It could have two sizes or more sizes if you need to. It can have the left icon or right icon, and you can change the label to be button whatever you want, and only changing this on one place. And this becomes really helpful when you are doing a very long website. You just need to do, okay, this is the button label. You don't need to go inside of each single layer to be able to change the text here. Hi, a button. This is very tiring to do that. Right now I'm doing only one, but if you're doing more than one, it's like so too much. So if you go here, you go to the label on the right side, you have the text field there. You don't need to worry about styling, you don't need to worry about any of that. Then you say, okay, this is my home page, or the, I don't know, services button, and I want this to be only one icon. You can do it like that. You can change the size if you want to, and you can do all like this with just using toggles. Okay, so without any more further ado, let's jump into it. As part of this tutorial, we will make a few elements, or a button with a few characteristics. For example, I'm going to make a button with a font size of the button, medium and small. Two states for now. I don't want to overcomplicate this. Default and hover, so we have an interaction on the button. I will add three styles: fill, outline, and ghost, which is like text button, like a text without any framing or anything like that. And I want you to be able to interact with the button in the design phase, where you could add an icon on the left or right, and then you can change this icon, because in some scenarios these icons are very helpful. So yeah, that's part of the scope of this tutorial right now. So let's go into that. So here we have, like, this is like an example of all the buttons that I'm thinking of creating today. So we have, for example, these let's say that this is the default, and this is the hover state. This is default for outline, and hover state for the outline, and this is a text button. And the well, for the text button we can make it like that. For example, when you hover, the text will be underlined. So for you to know what are the possible scenarios for using these icons, in some scenarios you could have a button that is pointing back to the previous page. So this could be a good use to have the button like this, or the following page. that will be also something like this. Okay, so it's like a visual aid for the user. Next page. For the next page, you could have something like this. So it's just for you to understand, like, why we could have buttons or icons in our buttons. In some instances, you could have a button that is like profile or share or something like that. You do want to add an icon in there, so it's like that is why I think having a button component with the ability of having these elements, extra element aside of the button label, it's for sure very helpful. Okay, so before starting, let me explain how this button will work. So what is how can we make this button, or why this button what are the elements of these buttons? Okay, so let me break this. Let me take this and put it here. Okay, so in this case, for example, we have our button. Let me show this. Okay, so we have this is the button. Okay, what are the pieces of that button? The button has the frame, the outer frame. It also has the content, which is this, and then inside of this content we will have like an icon, the left icon, for if you want to call it like that. We will have the button label, and we will have the right icon, or the button on the right. So this is like mainly how this button will work. Okay, or all the pieces that we will need to make this icon happen. So for now, let's start with creating the button on all the states, and then we will create a component set of this button, which essentially will incorporate all the different states that we created for this button in one single component. So and I will explain that to you. So let's go with the creating the button structure. Okay, to create the button structure, we would first need a content, or a container to hold all the content that is gonna be part of the button. So to do that, I will create one frame, and let me make this for visual purposes now. Let's make this frame with a stroke. Okay, so we know what is in there. So this is only for us to understand how this work. Okay, note that this frame, I can create this frame by pressing the letter F on my keyboard, or I can just click on this frame icon at the bottom center toolbox, where you can just drag and drop and create this button. Okay, so now within this button, I need to have like the icon, and this can be whatever icon you want. For in this case, I have like a star icon, or we could use the arrows if we want to, and we can create another icons. Okay, what else do we need? We need the label. Okay, and let me paste it here. So this is the label button. Button label. Okay, perfect. We have our button label, and now we need another icon. We can either duplicate the icon by pressing Command D, and this will duplicate the icon, or how I do it is like I select the icon, and then I press Option in my Mac, in my computer keyboard, and then the icon gets duplicated. Okay, so now we have all these elements. We need to put this element inside of the container, and now we will make this. We will drag these elements inside of the container that I previously created. this container will be the content container, okay? And keep in mind that right now this is just a frame. I haven't applied any kind of auto layout or anything like that, so let me call this container content. Okay, this is my content frame. Okay, but note that we have all these icons like moving around, and it's not the best way of having this. Okay, and actually the best way of creating this kind of layout is applying the auto layout of Figma. If we go to the right set of tools, you will see a section called layout, and here you have this plus this icon on the right corner that is it says use auto layout. You can either pressing activate this by pressing Command A, selecting the frame that you want to convert into auto layout, or you can just toggle this button and you will see how everything arrange themselves. Okay, note that now we have like a new set of tools that are going to affect this icon here, this content, the frame, the new frame, turn it into auto layout. So now because we want all the content to be always centered, and I will show you right now this. For example, if I increase the width of the button, you will see that all the content is pushed to the left. If we move this constraint grid here to say, okay, all the buttons, I want all the elements within this container to be aligned on the right, I can do that. If I increases the height, you know that all the content, because it's toggle on the middle, aligned to the left, all the content, if the frame grows or shorten vertically, the content tries to keep all the time in the middle of the frame. If we decrease the content from the right, you will see that the container from the right, you will see that the content sticks to the left. Okay, and this is because we have this set to be as it is. If we do that, if we put it on the top right corner, you'll see that everything is like that. Okay, but for now, because this is a button, we want all the kind of button that I'm creating at the moment right now, I want everything to be centered. Okay, another thing to keep in mind, if you hover within the on top of the content, you will see that you have these pink areas that represent the padding between all the elements that are within this content container. Okay, for example, in this case I only have 2 because I have 3 elements, and that's the padding between all the elements. If I duplicate this and I create a new one, a new icon, I will have another pink area that represents the padding. And know that we have it's trying to have, or it's making this padding all the same. Let's make it 8 pixels because I like to work in 8s. So and you can put whatever. If you want this button to be really wide and all the content to be all like spread around, you can do that like that, and 16 padding. There is another cool feature about the auto layout where you could say, okay, I want this, you know that the content is centered, but I want this content to take as much space as possible horizontally. So to do that, I can double click here, and you will see how now the padding between the elements is gonna be set to auto. So essentially it's gonna add the same spacing between all the elements to fill the content, okay, the container. So for now we don't want this, I don't need this, I just want like a simple button, and I just need 3 elements within this button. Okay, let me set my padding between the elements to 8 pixels, and now because this content is gonna be the inside content of the button, I want this to be set to hug. What is this? When you again on the same auto layout set of tools, we have the width and the height, because this this content is container is set to auto layout, we can say, okay, this content will be hog, which is essentially it's gonna take us it's gonna shrink the container to occupy only the space that the content is occupying on the layout. For example, because we don't have any padding on the sides, you see that all the container shrinks to be 160, because that's the number of pixels that all the content of the here is taking. If I duplicate this, know that we will have the content grow with the content inside. So we want this container to be set to grow hog, and also vertically we want the height to be set to hog again as well. So now we have our content here. What we need the outer container of the button now. So to do that, I will create a new frame, and then a new frame, and then this is my button. And this button, within this button container that I just created, I will drop my content. Okay, now because this is slightly bigger, the content is bigger than the frame, I increase the size, and now and note something. I mean, this is because I like to have the content inside of a container. But if I wanted, for example, if I have this content here, if I want this to be my button, I just need to add more padding on the sides, like 32 pixels and then 60 pixels here. Now I have my button, right? And this works. This is gonna work just fine, okay? But I like to have it like that, like this. So now we have this content inside of my button container, and then I will apply the auto layout to this. Shift A, and then because Figma knows that I put the content like in the middle, it's trying to add some padding and bottom, padding on the sides and on top and bottom, like automatically. So I want these to be 16 pixels on the sides, and then 8 pixels top and bottom. And know that what happened here, because I have my button set to fixed width, when I put the padding on the sides, what Figma did was decreasing the size of the content inside. And if you so I don't want that. I want the button to grow with my content. So to achieve that, I go to my set of tools on the right sidebar, and then I set the width of the container button set to hog. And know that now my content inside it's fully visible, and the outside container grew accordingly to the content inside. Okay, so now, because this, I don't need this to have any outline, and I don't want this to have any fill either. So now you see that we have our button. This is a button. Maybe this font is too big, a little too big. Let me check. Well, 16 is not too big, okay? But I do want this to be, let's say this is the large button, okay? We have this here, and then we have our button, check, okay? Now, this is the base button. I mean, I haven't added anything aside of just the content that I need. And this is the way that I create the component, is that when I'm creating the component, I make sure that I have all the content in the component from the beginning, so all the other components variants that I'm going to create have the same content. And then if I show and hide any element of the content, Figma knows that this content is visible on all the other or it's present on all the other variants. So that this is a good trick to when you're creating components. Why I'm saying so let's add some color to this. Let's say that this button is, let me move this over here because we don't need this anymore. This was just for the explanation. Okay, and then let me grab my color palette here, and then and note that these are just random colors. Okay, let me make this button to be this color. Okay, how did I do that? So we have this button here set to white, and if I want to put the fill on this color, there are two methods of doing that. So I can click over here to fill, click on the color swatch, then add the colors, the sample color tool, and then I can put this color here. This is one way, but the way that I like to work, I really like to work with shortcuts because that saves a lot of time. If you press the letter I, you can call the iDrop sampler, and then you click here, and then you have your color here. Beautiful, right? So pretty simple. Let's say that this button is name default, yeah, and let's call default the state. Okay, so this is my default button, and then I will I duplicate this, and then I will say, okay, now this is my hover. Okay, this is the hover state, but we don't want this hover state to have the same color, right? So we press the letter Y, and then letter I, and then whoop, we have this color. Beauty, right? So one thing that I suggest you to keep in mind when you are creating with UI layouts, check your contrast. You don't want to have a button where the contrast ratio is not accessible. So we have to make sure that we have everything set to green on this plugin, and then yeah, it looks like everything is correct here, right? So now I don't want to use, if I select these two components and these two frames, I can check, I can see all the colors that my selection has. Since I don't want to use the plain black on my text and icons, I can use it color sample and then change this color to be slightly a softer black. Okay, let me check the contrast to make sure that everything is it's okay. Yeah, beautiful. So cool. Now we have our default button and button on hover. Okay, so now what do we need? Now we need the other button, but this button will be outline. Okay, so let's duplicate this, and then outline, yeah, and then we add the name, and I will explain why I'm doing this this naming convention. Okay, and you will see that it's very, it looks like a lot of work right now, but it's gonna pay off in a few minutes. So now we want this to be let me FD, and then this has to have a stroke, and let me add this stroke to be the darker. Okay, nice. This is our outline button, and you can set the stroke however you want. You can set it to black if you want to, but let's say that I'm picking the darker purple here, And now for the text link, let me add the third property here. This is fill here, and then this fill. Okay, now for this, I don't want this to have any background color or any stroke. Okay, and we can reduce the size of this to be yeah, because we don't need this button to have that much, to occupy that much space, because we don't have anything else here. So now we have our 3 sets of buttons right now. Now what is the goal right now? I want this to create a component set, which essentially will include all the 6 variants here, and then I will make it a component set, and then we will create the different properties to apply to this button. Let me for the hover, I didn't change my the filling for the hover, and let me make it like this. Okay, so it's a slightly gray, a darker gray, and then we have that. What is the next step? Because and let me explain why I added let me create first the component set. So the next step is to create a component set. Now we select all these 6 elements or frames, and then we go to the toolbar on the right top corner. You see that we have like it's like a little cross with some elements, and you will know that we have an arrow here which expands a drop down, and you can create one component that will include all those. That's not what we want, because that will create a huge button with 6 buttons included. That's not the way. We can create multiple components with a chance. Essentially will create one component per element on my selection, and then we have this component set that is what I want to create. So let me click that, and now you see how the button became one big element. Now we don't have these the dashes, the slashes next to the names, because Figma understands that those are properties in our component. Okay, whatever you put, if you have like button / default, it's gonna create one property for the first word on your naming convention will be the name of the component, and then the second word will be one property, and then the third word will be another property. And you can have as many words in there as long as you have them following the slash. Okay, for now we have property number 1, default and hover, because those were the first words on all of them. And then property number 2, we have 2. Okay, fill and outline. And note that I forgot to add the name of to name these components, but that's not a problem, because you can select this component variant and you see, okay, this is my default and this is outline. No, this is not outline. You can add a new property that is called text. Okay, and then because you want this to be assigned as well to the same variant, you can set the property number 2 to be text, and now we no longer have that error that we were seeing there. Now I don't want to call everything property, right? So you can either clicking on this settings icon here to edit the property, and you can edit the property name. This will be my state. So we have state default, state hover, and then for this it's gonna be style fill, outline, or text. This is really cool, right? So now we can copy our button here, and then we will have, okay, we can, if we want to change it to hover, we can, on my drop down here where you have all the properties, you can change the properties, and then you can change this to be text or to be outline. Okay, nice. So what else do we need to add? Now I want to be able to change the label in my properties sidebar. Okay, because let's be honest, when you're working with buttons, you want to make this button another button. For example, I want to make, oh my god, wait a second. If I'm creating with the, I'm working with this button, let's say that this is button A, and then I want to another one. I duplicate this button, and then I want this to be this is gonna be a fill, and then I need to go double click to reach the label. And then this is fine because this is only 2 buttons, but if you're working on a big website with a big layout, it gets very convoluted, or it gets annoying. To be honest, it gets annoying. So one way to create this or to solve this situation is the following. So when you select your component, note that this now it's a fill icon, and it's outlined by these purple dash outline. Okay, if you want to be able to have this button label here as a text field, which is very handy, this is the way of doing it. So you go to properties here on your button, and then you will see this plus element here where you can create different properties. Let's click it, and then you will see, okay, a variant will be if I duplicate one of these. Each one of these elements, it's a variant within my component. If I click the text, I can add a text property to my button. Okay, in this case this will be label, and then it's good to have a default value. So button label, and then we can create property. Okay, cool. But now I have my button here, but I don't see any change here, right? Because I need to assign this label to each one of the text fields in my buttons variants. Okay, to do that you can click on the label. If you press command and click, you can click directly to the layer, but in this case, because we want to create to select all of them, we can do this. Let me show you how to add this with one. Now that this is the button label, but then we need to connect this text to my variable property, the property that I just created. So to do that, you see that we have a text field here, and then we have this little icon that looks like a crank or something. You can click on it, and then Figma is going to show you all the possible properties that you can assign to that field, that text field. You can set this to be button label. You see that it has a purple icon because this is part of the component properties. These are not part of this component, so they are black. You could assign it, but this is not what we want. I want this to be the button label. So now we have this here, and now that this is now purple because it's part of the component. So look, if I have my button here, you see how this label field, text field is here, so we can see, okay, this is home. Oop. Home, and then the label change. But because I don't have that text to be assigned to the other states, that is why the button label, Figma doesn't know what it should put on this label. So that's an issue, right? To solve this issue, we need to assign this the same variant property to all the button text, and then I will press Command Shift to be able to select and select all the text fields, and then I can go here and then whoop, add the variable, the property to the variable, and then we have all our buttons labels connected to the same text string. What that means is that if you change within each a component, or if you change the state of the component or the style of the component, and you inputted the label in the text field, this label won't change. So for example, you see how now it's on hover, now this is on text, now this is outline, and the home label is never changing. Okay, now we have this really handy button that we can have, like, we have 3 styles of the button in 3 different states. This is cool, right? So there is something that is bothering me, is that, for example, to me it's more important to have the style first than the state, okay? Because I want this style to be able to be, I want to be able to change the style easily. So this is a preference issue only. You see that if you hover on the property, you will have these draggers. You can drag this to be up, and then you can say, okay, this is my button label, this is fine to be there, let's do it. Okay, now we have our button. All right, now that we have our button done, like all our button has the icons, I want to be able to show or hide the icons based on this. I mean, I want to be able to show and hide the icons if I need to. I could want the button with icons, or I could want the button with just text. So to do that, we need to set a property of the component set to Boolean. What Boolean does is, when it's like a toggle, and then when it's active, it's gonna show the icon, and when it's inactive, it's gonna hide the icon. Okay, in this case the icon, but it could be something whatever you want on this on your component or element. So let me show you on one. First, let's create the icon, the property. So again, we need to select the whole container here, the master component, and then we go to properties, and then we have here Boolean. This is what we want. We want a Boolean property. Actually, we need 2 Boolean properties. So let's call this left icon, and we want this set to be true. Let's make it true. And then let me create a new one that is called right icon, and in this case I will set this icon to be the default value false. Okay, and you will see what is the difference. Now we can create. All right, so what's the next step? Yes, we need to assign the icon to the property. So let me do it on one button only. We can double click till we reach, if you see the layer panel on the left, we can either click in here or we can do double click. Okay, now we have the icon selected. We need to tell the component that icon will be handled by the Boolean property that I just created. How can I do that? If I go to my sidebar, on the right I'll have a section called appearance, where we have the same icon that we used recently to add a property, to assign a property to that element. In this case, because we want this to be showing high, the property needs to be set on here. Okay, so we go to the icon, assign property, we click here, and then because this is the left icon, it's gonna be click. Now you have this icon variable property assigned. Let's do the same with the right icon, but in this case, because I set the property to be false by default, as soon as I click and assign the property to this icon, you will see that the icon will be hidden, because I don't want that to be shown all the time. And then you see that now this icon is hidden. Okay, let's do the same with all these icons. So let me press Command Shift and click and click and click and click. So we have all our left icons, and then we go here on appearance, click, and then left icon. We do the same with the right icon, Command Shift, click, 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 and click, and then we have right icon hidden. Okay, but now you know what, I kind of like this button without the two icons by default. How can I do that? So to do that, I have the button here, the component, and then you see that we have this icon property now here. We can click on the settings, and then if we want to, we can change the label of the button, or we can set the default value here. So we do this, and then all the buttons will be hidden, all the icons will be hidden by default. Really nice, right? So now let me change the property here, because this is the hover, the default button label, and I want this to be underlined when I will hover. So let me add the underline here, and this is cool. Now we have all these properties of the button here. Then let me show you how that works, because for example, this is the outline button, and now that we have these toggles here that we can activate or deactivate however we want, and then we can change the button to be contact, for example, and then if we want to, we could have a different icon in here and paste it here. This is really cool and handy. Okay, now what is the next step? I want to have interaction on hover, because these are buttons that are meant to be used on website, for example. So I want to add an interaction to this button, so we know when the mouse hover over the buttons, we will be able to change the state of the button. Okay, let's do that. All right, to add the hover interaction to the buttons, we need to change the mode of Figma. We have on Figma a design mode, which is the mode that we are already using here, and then we go to the prototype mode. The prototype mode, what the prototype mode does is that you can link components, you can add interaction, you can set up a whole bunch of like properties, so the user have some kind of experience like the button will work on the real life. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to the right set of tools on my Figma screen, top right corner. You see that we have design, and then we have a prototype tab here. So we click that prototype, And we have like, this is like basics prototype settings, but because we don't have anything selected, we don't have anything really. So if we select one of the button, you will see that we have a new section called interactions, where you can click on it and essentially will say, okay, this is my interaction panel, where I can say I can choose between a few set of interaction triggers. You have a click, on drag, while hovering, while pressing, using the keyboard, mouse enter, mouse leave. You have a whole bunch of elements here to be activated to initiate the activation, the interaction. Then we have the action, where that we want that button to do when the trigger is activated. Okay, in the action we have navigate, that you can navigate to a different frame. You can change between states in the case that you have a component. You can set back, scroll. You have like, these are like very like, all of them are very helpful, and you, as long as you're working with Figma, you will be able to understand and see what are the benefits of using in one of them. Okay, for now this is only for you to know how that works. Okay, but know that because we are in the prototype mode, we go here and we have this button. You see these white dots. What these white dots are is like it creates a connection. If you click and drag, you see that we have an arrow. That what arrow does is that it's going to try to connect with the component that you want to connect with this button. Okay, in this case, because this is the default state, I want to connect it with my hover state, and then see how easy it is that you can whoop, and then now this is the connection has been made. Now the trigger by default on Figma is on click, but because this is a hover interaction, I don't want to be I don't want to click on it. I want just to hover. So I can say, okay, this is gonna be activated while my mouse is hovering this element. So when the mouse is hovering this button, it's gonna change to hover state. So let's do that. And now we have this while hovering, hover state. So note that the style, the beginning style, is gonna be fill, and then the destination style, if you want to call it like that, it's gonna be hover. Okay, and you could choose a different state if you want to, but in this case this is the way. Animation, you can make it instant, or you could make it smart animate. Let me check. Is in, so it's gonna add a nice interaction, a nice ease animation when the button changes. Okay, let's see how that works. So for example, I copy this button, and then let me create a frame. Let me A53, no, 393. Let me okay, just a screen here. Let me paste the button. Let's imagine that this is my really small website. To preview, I like to, in this case, because I want this to be a quick preview, I can select my frame and then go here to this arrow and then set this quick preview, the second one, and it's gonna create a new frame here where the preview is. So let me check. Let's wait to load. Nice. Now we have this button here, and note that when the mouse is inside of the button, it changes, right? But it changed like really slow. Maybe that's not the effect that we want to. So how can we solve this? We go here we go to prototype, we select the connection, and then we say, okay, now I want this to be faster, 150. Okay, yeah, this is nice, faster. So let's go again, reload, because we didn't do many changes. We go here and oh, this is better, right? Yeah. Let's say that we want the hover state to have a different shape. For example, I want this to have rounded corners, 16 pixel rounded corners. Okay, or you know what, pill shape. This button will be pill shape. So note that when the default state has like it's a rectangle, when it goes to hover, the button will change the form or the shape. Let me reload this and then whip. You see, nice, right? But it's a little jumpy. It's a little jumpy, right? I want this to be now. Let's make it is in and out. So what that means is that when the mouse hover in, it's gonna add the 200 milliseconds ease effect, but when the mouse hover out, it's gonna have the same 200 milliseconds. Okay, let me check. Now it's a little bit nicer, right? You have this and you have that. Okay, cool. Now because now all that you need to do is replicate the same concept to all these. One way that I found that is very helpful, for example, if you are doing this kind of stuff, you can literally select the connection. You know that you are in prototype mode, select the connection, and then you copy. Command C. Okay, you press Command C, and then you select this, and then Command V. Not that because I did it that way, Figma is saying, okay, because the connection was done between this and this, the new connection here, it's pointing to the same destination of the previous connection, but it's easy to fix. I just need to drag this and connect it to the right one. Nice. This helps like save you time because you don't need to re-enter all this information. You want that to be like that, you can do it like that. And let me do the same on this one. Command B, and then drag this to here, and done. We have our buttons fully interactive. And let me show you how that looks. But I need to change the style of the buttons. This set to text, this set to outline. Okay, now if everything works correctly, you see how cool the underline appears. Now we have this set to hover on gray, and this is really nice. Now let's say that we want this to be with the icon, we want this to be with this icon, and then we want this with this icon. Cool, right? So yeah, this is really nice, but what if I want to change the icons? What if I want to copy this icon and I want that icon to be my icon on the right? So one way of doing this is that you can do this, and then you can set the right icon to be show, and then you can grab this guy here, the icon. Let me close this so you don't get confused. Let me close it, grab this icon, and then you can, because you copy, you grab your icon here, this icon, then you press Command C or Control C if you are on a computer Windows. You copy here, and then you go here on this one, and then paste to replace. And note that you want to have you want to do the same on the other button, because you want that to be the same, right? There is also a shortcut, of course, that is paste to replace, which is Shift Command R. You press Shift Command R and you have this button like that. Really nice. And let me preview this. So we have everything. It's always helpful to test everything out. Okay. If you want to do the same with all the icons, you can select all of them, and then you can command Shift R to replace, and all of the icons are like that. You can also apply the same logic. If you, for example, have a whole bunch of icons here, you can have them all inside of one component and and make a selector with a drop down, and you can select that. Okay, there is another way where you can just replace the icons within your component. Here, for example, if you go here and you go click, you go with until the icon layer, you can click on this drop down, and if you have another icons created in your library, you can grab this icon from here. I don't have this icon connected because I grabbed this icon from another library. For the sake of this experiment, let me detach this, and now we can create the component. Test. Okay, now we have this component here. Pero let me make it bigger so we know what is changing. Okay, this is not the way of changing, but I just want you to take a look of that. So like I said, we go here to this element, and then we check here, and now that we have this button here, the icon, and then we change. If we change the state to default, note that the button the icon stays the same. So we go here and you have that. So we have the big icon on this button, but on the other button we have the smallest icon. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Note that because these are components, if you make changes to any of the components, these changes will affect all the components in everywhere that you on your document that you have them. For example, let's say that we want these buttons to have 8 pixels border radio. If you change that, all the buttons that you have on your document will be updated accordingly. So this is very handy, especially if you're working on a big project. You want that to be like that, because in my experience, when you're working like in a big website, and you, for example, you started using a button and you didn't know about components, you just created your website without any components, and then let's say that your client say, okay, you know what, I don't want this button to be square, I want the button to have rounded border. You will need to go on every single element and change that border radio to be the new border radio that your client wants. But if you're using components, if you go in the smart way, you just need to edit one component or a set of components, and your document will be changed like magic. throughout your design. So for example, like you saw right now, let's say that they don't want this outline button to be white because their page is on another color, and then they want this to be like this, like green. You see that because I changed the color of this and these variants change it accordingly. So this is really helpful for when you are working on big or small projects. That is like, I usually try to create all my UI elements on a website as a component when I'm designing on Figma, because that saves me a lot of time. You can set different sizes, and let's say that, for example, you want to add a different size of this. Let's say that these are the large buttons, but you want another set of buttons that are small. Okay, so how can you do that? Now that we can increase the size of this, you are going to select all the buttons. So but first, because I want to be some sort of organized, because I know what I want to do, I want to create a new set of buttons on a smaller size. That means that the property will be size. Okay, so first I want to create a new property called a new set of variants called size. So the default, which default will be all the current buttons that you have in your component set, those are the large size. So this is large. Okay, now you can, one way of doing it is just selecting all your buttons here and press this plus here, and it's gonna be automatically duplicated, all of them. You do this, you see now, and then you grab them a little bit down so you have everything nice and organized. Oh, but we have an error here. You see that all the properties and values of the variants are conflicting, because we have essentially the size for these 6, but now we have all these 6 buttons that Figma thinks are the same, but because they're not, you can go to the size, because that's the property that is not currently connected to all these 6 new buttons, and then you go here and you can have, okay, this is my new button name will be small property, boom. Now if you go here, you see that the size is small, default, and all that. And if you go to the prototype, you will see that all your buttons are connected, because you also copy this connection when you made the duplicate of the variant. Okay, now in one way we want these buttons to be smaller. Let's say that you want the label to be 14 pixels instead of 16. You go here and you set this to 14, but this is not enough. They look almost the same, right? You want also to change the padding to be, instead of 16, you want this to be 8, and you want to be 8. Now it looks like a smaller button, right? And then for this one, because yeah, for the sake of this experiment, let me put 4 pixels here. So now we have our set of buttons. Okay, now we have our set of buttons here, and now that we have the size, small or large, we can change within outline, we can change to fill, we can change the state to hover or to default, and then we also have the interaction on the button. Let me show you. You have this, and the whoop, and now you have your button that have all the settings. You can change this to be whatever contact, and then you can create your navigation about us, for example. And then you can, whenever you need to create a new project, all you need to do is to make sure you copy this component to your new document, and then you change. For example, let's say that I don't want this font anymore, I want to be on this a different font. Let's select, I don't know, let me check this. Boom, all your all your buttons font were updated to Instrument Sans, and it's as easy as that. And that is why I think this is a very powerful, and I know this video took a little longer than I was expecting, but I wanted you to be able, after this video, to create a set of buttons with interactive elements for you as a designer, that it's gonna save a lot of time. You no longer need to go to add an icon on every single item of buttons in your website. So this is a nice way of working efficiently.